Captain Midnight.
So, if you've followed my channel for very long at all, you'll probably know that Avatar: The Last Airbender has become one of my favorite topics to make videos about. And for obvious reasons, it's a really good show. But ever since I made that first Avatar video over a year ago now, I've had people asking me what I think of The Legend of Korra. And to be honest, I just didn't have a great answer for them. Because here's the thing. I've never really sat down and watched Korra from start to finish. While it was on, I'd really just catch episodes here and there. During that time, I was going to college and working a crappy job at the same time, and Korra just kind of slipped through the cracks. So when people ask me my opinions on the show, all I can really say is, at the time, the at least first 2 seasons or so didn't quite grab me enough to stick around. I'm finally correcting that now though, and I'm running through the series, starting with the pilot Welcome to Republic City, an episode I'd seen before but only had vague memories of. I honestly have no idea how I'd feel about it now in 2020, and that's what I wanted to dig into this week.
Attention citizens of Republic City! The ultimate battle is about to begin!
You've been following Korra.
So one thing I want to make clear is that this is a review of Korra's first episode, not the show as a whole. TV pilots, the original Avatar included, are usually far from perfect, and I don't want to ever judge the entire show off of it. So with that in mind, how does Korra's hold up? Overall, I think it's a mixed bag, but largely positive, because it's also a very ambitious mixed bag, which I can respect. When we're introduced to Korra, she's already a highly competent bender. We really get the sense that she's a natural when it comes to the physical side of bending, but as they say, not the spiritual side. I think what I found most interesting about Korra herself in this first episode is how sheltered she seems to be. In many ways, she was a child prodigy, which led her to focusing on her bending powers above all else. So while she's super confident in her abilities, she also seems to know very little about the actual world around her. That makes a lot of sense to me. She's like one of those kids that's been training to be a great athlete her whole life, and there just hasn't been very much time for pretty much anything else. So if this episode is about anything, it's about Korra discovering the larger world. And since this world has drastically changed so much since the days of Aang, we the audience get to discover it along with her. And I actually think that's a really smart way to structure a pilot. Speaking of positives, I think this is a really great looking and especially sounding show. Avatar was known for having great music, and that's definitely continued here. I really wish YouTube's copyright system was less annoying so I could play you some of the music that plays as Korra says goodbye to her parents and heads towards the city, because it's honestly some of the best music I've ever heard in a kid's show. And that's definitely something that made this episode go down smooth, even if I didn't love every moment of it. I guess I should probably talk about this show's connection to Avatar in a little more detail. I think what really surprised me here, that I didn't remember from having watched it years ago, was just how bleak Republic City could be. It's not a complete dystopia or anything, but it definitely isn't everything Aang and company had probably hoped for either. There seems to be a lot of desperate poverty that takes Korra by surprise. I mean, this one cop looks ready to beat Korra with a baton over illegally fishing in a river, which seems not great. And that's not even mentioning the mobsters who local businesses are being forced to pay protection money to. Overall, the portrait this paints of Republic City is not a very pleasant one. At the same time though, it is clear that the era of Aang has led to some rapid advancement, as technology has evolved so far past the point of Avatar that it almost stretches believability. I don't have a massive problem with this. Like, it was obviously done to give this show its own unique look and flavor, and I think it works really well on that front. But it does paint a pretty strange picture of what life has been like since the end of the old show. The only returning character from the trio that we get here is Gatara, who is still very committed to that hairstyle after all these years. It's cool to see her again, but this is obviously a very different character now. It's a version of Katara that I'm really looking forward to seeing some more from. This pilot just doesn't have that much time for her, but what there is, I think is pretty promising. It's also really cool that this Katara is played by Eva Marie Saint, an actress from classic Hollywood films like On the Waterfront and Hitchcock's North by Northwest. Definitely not someone I expected to pop up here. Another notable actor is J.K. Simmons as Tenzin, who I found to be the most interesting character in the pilot. It's really hard to imagine Aang having a kid like Tenzin, which I assume will get explored more as the show goes on. I mean, the young Aang we got in Avatar would annoy the hell out of the Tenzin we have here, who seems to be a very quiet and reflective man, and at times pretty severe and a little cold. That's not to say I found him unlikable. I actually think his personality makes for a pretty good dynamic with Korra, who has a lot of youthful enthusiasm. He is really buttoned up though, and I'm really curious to see if he maybe opens up a little bit more in the future. One choice I wasn't quite sold on was the chief of police being the daughter of Toph. While I understand that there's going to be a lot of connections to the old show, this one felt a little more forced than the others. I guess this ultimately comes down to your own preference, but I think having so many children of the original cast in this one makes the world feel pretty limited and small in a way that the original never did. It's not a huge deal, but at least so far it's one of my least favorite pieces of world building in this show, and it feels a little bit like lazy fan service. But there is a chance they could turn me around on that in the future, assuming that they use her really well.
On Friday, September 13th, Korra is back.
Overall, I'd call this a pretty basic but very sturdy pilot. It had great music and a pretty fantastic action set piece with Korra battling criminals, but it definitely feels very much like a pilot, which means lots of exposition and maybe the feeling that it's a bit overstuffed. It's a promising start, but not a perfect one. Still, I'm really interested to see what you guys think. Like, when do you think Korra really hits its stride? Are you a fan of the show overall, or do you think it dropped the ball? Now, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but I would like to hear your opinions. I know I'm coming from a pretty limited perspective in this video, having not seen the whole show, but I'm really interested to see where I fall on Korra once I finally finish it. Oh, and let me know if you think I should make more videos on it in the future, or if you'd prefer me sticking to Avatar. I'm looking forward to reading your thoughts, and I will see you next week.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.